Greetings, everyone. I am the man behind the anime girl. Welcome back to the Azina Arcane YouTube channel. I am here with my friends Mad Matt and Ojunix.
Evening.
Hello.
We're going to be talking a little bit about the video game industry, well, the Western video game industry's obsession with chasing realistic graphics, whether you want to call it chasing realism, whether you want to call it, in some cases, uglification, or just plain fucking trying too hard. I'm sure you guys can kind of agree that like it has caused a problem where like a lot of games you can just put them back to back to back to back and you can't tell what's what because they all just look so similar.
Oh, look, another dull gray world. Fantastic. Hope there's some brown in this one.
And the thing is, like there's a lot of them where you know we're at a point where increase in technology is kind of giving like diminishing returns.
Yeah.
Like Be-
Basically.
because even during the PS4 era, there are some games that had really amazing realistic looking graphics with realistic looking character models. Like a lot of people shit on the game, but in the Order 1886, those character models were fucking
Oh,
amazing.
the visuals of that one, yes.
Yeah, like and that was a PS4 game. That was last generation, and there's games that come out now that run worse that don't look as good as that game did. Because a lot of the things that improve the graphics, supposedly improve the graphics, add effects that you might not even notice at like a quick glance. Because like there's
You,
the big
yeah,
obsession.
you won't even notice the effect is and how much it's affecting things, but it's the newest effect and it's really popular. It's going to be really strong effect and making realism happen, but it's slower than the old way of just doing it yourself.
or or adding details you don't need, like look at the sweat particles that are on the character model. Who cares? Nobody was looking at that.
And the extra wrinkles in every single effing pore on their
Or
face.
or literally have to make sure to point out every single hair strand. See, this one's slightly more gray compared to this darker gray.
Show the
Well,
clip of Krusty the Clown stepping in front of an HD camera and having the children scream.
and like the big one that I understand why the tech exists, and in some circumstances, depending on what type of game it is, it can be really amazing. But the big thing right now is like ray tracing, which adds more realistic reflections. But like if you're playing,
Realistic reflections and lighting, but if you go too hog hard on it, it just swallows up everything.
and
Yeah.
also in a game like Warhammer 40K Dark Tide, which has weird optimization issues on PC. Um, when you're running through guns a-blazing, just destroying hordes of demonic mutant monsters, how often do you actually stop to look at a fucking reflection in a puddle? You're just
I would say about I would say
Oh no,
about
how sweet is
zero.
my power armor?
I would say about zero.
because so you're kind of like sacrificing performance for something that's not super necessary, and I think that happens a lot. Not just with ray tracing, but with like a lot of stuff. Because and the other thing is, this guys that were recently watching Jurassic Park movies, it's kind of got the Jeff Goldblum quote of, "You were so busy asking about whether or not you could, you didn't bother to ask about whether or not you
You
should." Where it's
should.
like, where it's like you're pushing the graphics to try and make it look better, where people don't even really notice it. But there's also the fact that in some instances, it doesn't work as well because, like, okay, you got this super realistic character model, but the facial animations don't look right or whatever. Like some other thing that's part of the presentation doesn't match up with how good the character model looks. So while it's not uncanny valley, it just kind of creates this weird effect where you're like,
This
something
why does
feels
this
off.
person look like this? Because they don't match with the rest of everything going on around them.
Yeah. And you got some instances where like certain games that just have bad acting in them. That I'm not gonna name names because we'd be here forever. But like one that's not like super awful, but has caused people to complain about uglification of characters. Has been some of the stuff that was been going on with NetherRealm lately.
Oh yeah,
Um,
NetherRealm is definitely one that does that a lot.
and I
Yeah.
think part of the problem is because you know, Ojunix, last year you played through Injustice 2, so I'm gonna
Hmm.
curious if you agree with me with that one, where it's like a lot of the female characters that aren't Catwoman, she just looks ugly in that for some reason, but a lot of the female characters in that look good as long as they're not making a facial expression in a cinematic cutscene.
Yeah.
Like, because Supergirl is gorgeous in like her character model when you're in just a regular match, but like a lot of the facial expressions that she would make in like the cinematic cutscenes of the storyline would just make her face contort in a way where you're just sitting there going, it's not
Ugh.
uncanny valley, but that's not the
Eh,
way people look when they make that kind of expression. Something just is off and it makes
yeah,
her look
I know. Well,
ugly.
like one thing I always know is it seems like their cheekbones always seem to like to get um pu- either really distorted or puffed up when they're trying to make some kind of expression that isn't just plain face or uh well, yeah, just basically that. Like they try to look angry or upset, and then it doesn't look right
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah, because and there was one point in that where I'm pretty positive Supergirl was looking like horrified about supposed to be looking horrified about something, but the facial expression she made looked more like she just stubbed her toe, and I'm just like, what? That doesn't look right. Um, and granted, this is a last gen game, but like the thing is, it's something that's carried over into their newer stuff because like a lot of the complaints people were making about Mortal Kombat 1 and the women being ugly were people using stills from cinematic cutscene moments where the character was making some sort of weird expression. Like, I'm not going to say this version, the version of Tanya in Mortal Kombat 1 is like drop dead gorgeous, but like everybody always had like the worst screenshots of her where she's like scowling or something to like point out how ugly they thought she was, which is a problem with you not being able to get the facial expressions to look right. And it's funny that you have over the past couple of years two indie studios that weren't focusing on everything being super realistic as much that managed to do those kind of facial expressions better with Baldur's Gate 3 and Clair Obscure Expedition 33 where you know they actually did motion capture so the
Hmm.
facial expressions actually look proper and apparently if these big AAA companies are doing it
They're
Doing
they're
not
it
doing
doing
it
it
right.
right.
They're
wrong.
doing something wrong and messing with it.
Yeah,
Right. Right. And I think
because yeah, go ahead.
you go ahead.
I was gonna say is like that's one of the reasons why I say like, for example, because I know we're focusing on the Western, but it's like the Japanese like Capcom when they're because of how a lot of the Resident Evils have gone for the very realistic look. But thing is, they were doing all the mocap with the actors.
Right.
So I think it's like yeah. Now I can see why. So that's why a lot of the characters when they make facial expressions, they look natural. They look fine. But for some reason, when I see something like Mortal Kombat 1 or Injustice 2, it just doesn't look right.
Yeah,
Unless
it's weird. I don't get how it keeps happening.
mhm.
Um, the other thing I want to point out is, and some of these instances, it's where it is where they more or less uglify the character, but like we've had so many instances where while they're going for a super realistic look, you have a face model that you've used for a character, and then you look at the face model who's drop dead gorgeous, and then you look what the character actually looks like in the game, and they either look like the person got hit with an ugly stick, or in some cases, they don't even look like the person that
They
they
Yeah,
don't even
used the
look them.
face
Yeah,
model
they don't
for.
even look like
yeah,
them except for maybe the hair color or something. But it's like, why?
Because
yeah.
people were
No, it's
pointing
like
out that the woman that they used as a face model for the main character in Star Wars Outlaws is like drop dead gorgeous,
yeah,
and a lot of camera angles of the character in game, it's like she doesn't even look human. She looks like an alien, and I know it's Star Wars, but she's not an alien. She's supposed to be human, and she looks weird.
Yeah,
And there's other instances where like this one's not as bad. Forspoken, the girl that uses the face model in that is also gorgeous, but Frey doesn't look ugly. She just looks bland as fuck compared to the person she's actually face
yeah,
modeled off of.
They
yeah.
dumbed down the visuals in that case, and it's like what?
But and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you're going for realistic graphics and whatever, but blah blah blah. But here's the thing: if you're going to pay a face model money to model the character after them, and then the character doesn't actually look like the person you face modeled them off of, that's a waste of resources. You paid somebody for literally nothing. You could have just made a completely new character model instead of using a face model, and it would
Because
have cost you less money.
because you
And
had to
might have
pay
looked better.
because you had to pay the person and then pay the people who did all the work on the computers trying to fix up the face. It's like there's some resources just now gone.
And if it's because there's something wrong with your system where the face model just doesn't come across the way it should, then stop paying for something that your tech can't handle
Yeah.
because it
It's
just doesn't make
that
sense.
it's that or the people working on it for some reason decide to make it their personal choice to change it and not in the best way.
But still, there are so many cases. Look, all these companies are complaining about how they have to charge. So we need to charge $100 for our game because it costs too much money to make games. Then stop wasting your money on stuff that doesn't need to be in the budget. You didn't need to pay a face model. You didn't.
Oh,
I bet you, unless it's an extreme case, you didn't even need mocap either.
uh,
Haven't you guys heard of being an animator? And
to, to,
don't
to
some
the
of these tools even
yeah.
have some pre-built stuff that you can just tweak a little and make it your own?
Problem is the money. Two of the biggest things that's literally wasting a lot of money in these developments is two things: advertisement, because advertisement is for some reason stupidly expensive, and the constant work, the workers that do a lot of work, and then because they can't decide on what they want, or they change their minds, or want to do something different, and then scrap it, and then they hire new staff to take over a previous staff, and aka the whole, as somebody has pointed out, bloat. They're just too many freaking workers in these
But
companies that is just not needed.
but it is worth pointing out that in most cases the marketing has a separate budget from the rest of the game, so that's not super relevant. But they they do waste a lot of money on marketing that probably doesn't actually work in most cases. Because these people still think that people watch TV and put commercials on TV, even though no one's actually watching TV.
Well, it's okay. I mean, in some cases they do still put billboards, or in some certain cities they have like the giant video feeds on walls of skyscraper buildings, like New York, for example, or LA. They will advertise them through those.
Yeah, but at the same time, that only advertises to people that live there, because most cities don't have stuff like that set up. Like most cities are not anything like New York. They don't have freaking
I
size
know.
of size skyscrapers with ads. Um, but to end on a more positive note, I think you guys can probably both agree that stylized graphics are just better than obsessing over
Oh
realism.
yeah.
Yeah,
They give
Just
agreed.
as a recent out intro to that, I would highly recommend the Soul Calibur franchise. They've updated the graphics, but it's still very stylized.
right, and
Right.
yeah, and the thing is like those stylized graphics will always age better because they didn't try to worry about realism. But
Right.
also it gives your game a more distinct visual style of
Feel.
its own for
Yes.
you to remember it for than obsessing over it. We need it to be as realistic as possible. It's like not every game
I
needs to
think
be
a realistic Raziel would be terrible.
yes, not everything needs to be Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's obviously those two games are probably some of the biggest reasons why so many, especially AAA, want to keep pushing their games to look so realistic, because they did it first.
And not enough people have learned a lesson not to try and follow that trend.
That's but that's the problem with AAA. It follows trends.
follows trends and the stupid decisions of shareholders that have no business trying to run anything because they don't actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's why we've been seeing the rise of like indie developers lately, because either they're not owned by a company that has shareholders, or they're a private company, so they're,
Yeah.
the person that owns all the stock is not letting stupid people in that can affect decisions.
Yeah.
So uh,
That's why Larian will be perfectly fine.
Larian will be fine, and a bunch of other studios will be fine as long as they keep putting out good stuff. Well, meanwhile, some of these companies, I don't know how much longer they're actually going to exist.
I mean, Ubisoft is so dirt cheap now, you could actually buy stock.
Yeah, well,
Not a good sign.
Ubisoft is like a slightly different story than a lot of the other Western developers because they're based in France, so
Yeah.
they don't follow the same kind of um,
Log
laws in
logic
regards to
laws.
stock and all that stuff that U.S. companies do. But
Right.
there is still the fact that if the company keeps tanking and tanking and tanking, they might stop existing. Um,
Yeah.
but in any case, I think that's all we have to say. So until next time, everybody, happy gaming.
Ab-
Uh,